would say, how deeply do you want to devote your life to truth? It's your choice. And 95% for many people is good enough. And for me, with my soul on fire, with passion ignited, I wasn't going to be able to do that. I've never been able to do that. I've never been able to do 95%. It's always been all in. I can't be all in if my heart's not all in.
Hello and welcome to the James Xander Trip. Today I have a very special guest with me, Danny Miranda. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so honored to have you on the show.
It's an honor to be here because the last time I appeared on this podcast, it was a group session we were doing, and I went so deep on my story and my truth, and it's like, wow, James really has a talent for bringing out the depth to me, and I'm so grateful for that. So thank you for having me on your podcast again, and I'm so excited for whatever we're going to explore today.
I am so honored to be sitting across from you, having spent 4-5 days with you, learning from you, and not just learning from your words, although there's many wise words that you've spoken, but from your being, from your energy. And I cannot, just for context for the listener, Danny was hosting a 4-day retreat here in Austin, which I flew from Bali to here to attend. And it's been incredible. It's been one of the best experiences of my life. I've learned so much. And even when we thought the retreat was over, the learning still continued.
That's for sure.
We met up for dinner and there was a whole nother chapter of the retreat that opened up for me. Then we met up for coffee this morning and another chapter. And it's just, the magic is insane. So I am so curious to ask you as my first question. The thing that I perceive in you the most is this unwavering presence and such a strong sense of unconditional love. How do you do it? How do you stay so aligned in every moment that I've seen you and witnessed you? And how can others bring that love into their life?
I really appreciate the questions. And the first thing that comes to mind is I'm a human being. I'm human. I'm very human. And I do aim for and feel unconditional love at many points in my life. And the deep presence is real. It's real. I feel that within myself. And I think the only proper answer I could give is everything that you feel externally is what I internally feel about myself. When no one is here, when I'm just sitting in this apartment by myself, I'm saying, I love myself. I love myself. I'm doing actions that align with that truth. I'm running every day. I'm reading. I'm meditating. I'm writing. And when I don't do something that is in alignment with the person that I want to be, I quickly say to myself, it's okay. You have another opportunity in this moment to be the person that you want to be. So I don't spend a lot of time beating myself up. And the judgments that I used to have, I looked at and I explored and I tried to figure out, why do I hold this judgment? Where does this come from? And then over and over, rep after rep, over and over, meditation after meditation, breathwork session after breath. And so what you are seeing today is the manifestation of years of work, where it's been my sole focus to increase the amount of love that I have for myself.
Oof. And sole focus to increase the amount of love I have for myself.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And it really started to level up in a deeper way when I had David Hawkins' map of consciousness available, because I could see what I was actually doing. I didn't know that this is the path that I was on, that my soul was meant to go on.
Wow.
But when I saw that and dedicated my life to it, it all became so clear. And I could have a map for different emotional states. And if anyone hasn't heard of David Hawkins' map of consciousness, I would recommend Googling it right now, because just looking at this document can change your life. It definitely did for me. But it's a map that details and highlights different emotions. From the lowest end, you have something like grief and shame, building up to anger at the 200 level, because he puts numbers and algorithmic logs on every emotion, and that's really what makes it so powerful. And he basically details the journey one can reach to get to love. And so seeing this map made it really clear for me that this is the journey of my life. This is the journey that I was on before I knew I was on it.
Wow.
And it made me dedicate my life to it. And so,
when did you first come across David Hawkins' work, and what has his work meant to you?
Yeah. So in 2018 or 2019, I saw it floating around Twitter somewhere. It's like, that's an interesting thing. That was it. Just saw it floating around on Twitter.
Has a cool cover too.
Yeah, it's got a great photo that it really hits I made it my phone background. And so it's really something cool to look at. But it wasn't until 2023 did I see it, and I really went, oh my God, this is something special. This is a work of art. This is really important. I need to read this book. Maps of Consciousness Explained was the book that I read. And
first book by David Hawkins that you've read.
It was the one that impacted me the most. I don't know the order in which I read them, but I know that when I read Maps of Consciousness Explained, I said, oh my God, this is so real. This is so important. I need to dedicate my life to this, because this is just hitting me in a way. I couldn't stop consuming David Hawkins material. I couldn't stop reading. There wasn't enough time in the day for me to go through all of it. And this was around the time that I started to bump into my friend Elle randomly on the Austin trails, which we are very close to right now. I don't know if you've been on them, and taken walks on them, but they're just magical places. And so I'd bump into her, and it'd just be, we'd look at judgment after insecurity, and where does this come from? And we'd go back and forth, and it was mutually beneficial for both of us. And these were quote unquote random run-ins that would last 6 to 8 hours. It's like, when do you run into someone that lasts 6 hours and you'd go into the deepest parts of your soul? We were both hooked on these conversations because they were so magical, and I could feel myself getting more loving. I could feel myself lose judgment after judgment, insecurity after insecurity. And then I just opened more and more to love.
I feel it. And I told you this at the beginning of the retreat. I was in such awe of your presence. And I know, I don't mean to put you on a pedestal, but just to witness the sincerity of your love towards everyone and everything.
Yeah.
Like this beam that you cannot stay judgmental when you're around Danny. Because your standard is on such a level that you either rise to it or you exit the environment that you're in. You talked about judgment, and I'm curious to ask you, because this is something that I think everyone can relate to, especially I can relate to it as well. And when you felt judgment on others, how did you let those judgments go? And when judgments arise today for you, how do you dissipate them? How do you transmute them? What is the process today when you run across a judgment that pops up in your mind?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is, as soon as a judgment pops up in my mind, I ask myself, where is this present in me?
Right.
Where is this present in me? Because I know that the only reason I'm judging this person is because that judgment represents something about myself that I don't like.
So it's always the case that any judgment you have on others is something that you don't like in yourself.
Yes.
That is either the exact same thing or matches the frequency of it.
Yes. Or matches the feeling
Yeah.
that I get when I do this thing, or I am this type of person. I don't like that about myself. And so the judgment presents an amazing mirror for me to look at just by flipping it. And I've seen this to be true so many times that I no longer fight that process. But that process can take someone 3 months, 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years, a lifetime for someone to actually make that realization of, this is a judgment that I have about this person, and this means something about me. So that's where I go today.
Can you share a story of one judgment that you noticed in someone and then you flipped it and you realized, oh my God, it's also in me, and how you then went about it.
Yeah. What is the most recent judgment? It's a really good question. I don't know. I don't know is the God's honest truth. One thing that my friends laugh at me a lot about is my memory. And my memory's actually improved quite a bit over the past month or two since I've been writing. But my memory is actually really poor. And I think that has really served me in a lot of ways because I'm not holding on to so much. And
you don't remember
exactly. Exactly.
I love it.
Exactly.
It's could be seen as a great advantage because you're constantly living in the present.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely judged the homeless man that I spoke to briefly. The story of in the past, or 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think, my friend Jack and I were standing on a bridge and talking, and a homeless guy comes up to me, and he he puts an imaginary gun in my head and starts calling me just gay slurs. And I was so scared. I guess I didn't really judge him, but I was insecure. I was nervous. I was fearful. And then I said to myself, after like 20 seconds of being scared of what he was doing and not being completely unsure of how to react or how to respond, I just turned to him and said, I love you. And I fully meant it. And in that moment, he just walked away.
Wow.
And it just completely diffused the situation. And so I don't know if that's a judgment or an insecurity on my part, but that was my most recent example of like, I don't feel safe.
Yeah.
I feel insecure.
It reminds me of a quote by Florence Scovel Shinn. She said something like, send love to your enemies and their arrows will be transmuted into blessings. You sent love to him, and in a second or two, his confrontation was transmuted into peace.
Yes. Yes. So there's a guy, Bryce Crawford. Have you heard of him? 3 people have sent me this video in the past 2 days. It's him going up to people who are homeless or who are on the streets of LA and praying for them. And I just thought, wow, that's the next level of what I'm capable of in some sense, and what we're all capable of. But I really saw it in myself because I feel that homeless people in general are one area that I have to grow in and with, because when I grew up in New York, and in New York, there's a lot of homeless people. And so you quickly train yourself to look past the pain of it. And I can see clearly now that that moment on the bridge was divinely orchestrated for me to help show me the next level of what's possible for me, and what Bryce Crawford, I believe is his name, is capable of doing, and what he is doing, just going up to people who seem to be in bad states and praying over them. And it's just such a beautiful thing to witness. And I'm inspired, this 20-year-old kid, very inspired by his acts of courage and his acts of love. It's more than courage. It's straight up love.
Do you pray daily?
Yeah, I do. I pray over the food that I eat every day. I use that as the trigger to bless myself, bless the surroundings, bless bless me and everyone I love. And I sometimes go out on this balcony after taking a shower and just talk to God and pray. My prayers aren't for anything in particular. Like, I'm not trying to get anything with the prayer. The prayer is a thank you, God, for what is and what's going on and the current moment and just things that I appreciate.
Yeah.
And I do think there's a big difference between prayer for, I need this thing, God, please give me this thing, versus God, thank you for what I have.
Absolutely. You're nurturing the relationship with God rather than trying to get something from God. Can you guide us through a short prayer, just a prayer of gratitude, so the listener can tune in with us?
Yeah. Thank you, God, for bringing James and I together in this moment, for the wonderful soul in front of me that I've seen grow so much over the past 5 days, from his intention with the retreat to his actions, to his words, to his vulnerability, to his courage. God, thank you so much for letting me witness James's journey. It's been truly remarkable. God, thank you so much for everybody listening, for the human on the other side of this who is spending their precious time, energy, and attention trying to improve their life in some way, trying to lead with more love, trying to be a human being who is full of light. Thank you, God, for allowing this human being to find this podcast in this moment so that we can all grow together. Thank you, God, for allowing the internet to exist, which is probably where you found this podcast. Thank you, God, for the internet. Thank you, God, for allowing human beings to connect, because when we connect, we grow. And when we grow, we feel more love in our hearts. And so, God, thank you so much for the internet. God, thank you for allowing human beings to connect and be one with one another. And thank you for all the blessings you've brought into my life in the form of people, relationships, friendships, the ability to move my body, the ability to move my mind, the ability to be inspired, the ability to find mentors and people on the path. Thank you so much, God, for all of the blessings you've given me and the people around me. I love you, God. Amen.
Amen. Wow. Thank you, brother. I feel the potency of that.
Me too.
So beautiful. How do you feel after hosting your third retreat? What lessons or insights have you gained from the experience?
Yeah, I love this retreat. Like, this is my life's purpose, James.
It was so good.
This is what I'm here to do on this earth. I feel so high from these retreats. And, this one was amazing. The first two were amazing. And I just feel so high on the connection, on the joy, on the love that's shared, on people seeing each other at a deeper level of living in truth, of going for it. I feel so high from the whole thing. And there were no substances consumed. I told you before the weekend, this is going to feel like shrooms. And what did you say?
Feels like shrooms. Feels like coming off of a psychedelic trip.
Yeah. And so, how do I feel? I feel amazing. I feel so grateful to be in my purpose. And I feel like I want this for every human being. I want every human being to be this lit up by life, by their work, by the things that they do. And I believe that's possible. What lessons have I learned?
Yeah. Do you find yourself growing through hosting the retreat? Because obviously all of us as attendees grew from the retreat.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing there's growth that's happening for you as well on a whole different level.
100%. I mean, what's the coolest thing for me is that I could feel in this one how the space that I had was more than in the one prior, and more than the one prior. And what I mean by that is I had more capacity, I had deeper presence. I felt deeply present and had big capacity back then in February and April. But actually, the biggest difference that I noticed was I felt like because I had been through the hardship of a breakup in May and built myself back up, that the love that I was expressing was coming from an even deeper place. And so I felt so grounded and so centered and so embodied in this one more than anyone in the past.
Wow.
And so I'm really grateful for the hardship because it allowed me to see what that hardship and moving past that hardship and moving through it actually did to me on the other side. And that's why it was so cool to hear the reflections from people, because I could completely see a reality where I was still in heartbreak 5 months after, but I wasn't. And that was a beautiful thing to witness. And that was a beautiful thing to witness how my work on myself, because it's never ending, led to growth for other people.
How do you hold that space? I think one of the members described it as infinite space. And I'm so curious. And you even said you noticed your space expanding.
Yeah.
Your ability to hold space for others is remarkable. And I never saw it wane. I never saw your energy retreat.
Yeah, it's like retreat isn't even like the best word for what we just did, right? It's like more like we attacked the truth. We attacked
the truth. I love it.
We attacked love, like, and became that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, the word retreat. What was the question?
How do you hold infinite space?
I don't know if it's infinite, but I do know that the space, I genuinely believe it's connected to hours meditated. And so I've probably meditated 1,000 hours in my lifetime. 1,000 hours of meditation equals somebody really seeing themselves clearly. And if somebody really sees themselves clearly, people are just a reflection of you. So they'll see you clearly too. And, my cousin Ben attended the retreat, and he stayed with me for the past 14 days. And he's like, I can't unsee this.
Yeah.
I can't unsee the truth. And I was like, yeah, that's it. That's it. And so I can't unsee 1,000 hours of meditation. It's just part of me. It's part of my being. It's part of who I am. So that space is really just getting projected outward when I'm talking to people.
Did you have any favorite moments from the retreat that you could share without divulging private details?
Sure. The first thing that comes to mind was the last exercise. The second thing that comes to mind, and I'll keep that private in case people are listening, are going to be attending the retreat like you were listening and you were like, what am I getting signed up for here? And I really like the surprise element. I love people figuring out ahead of time too if they're really interested, but I also love people just showing up being like, I don't know what we're doing here and I'm excited to find out.
The less you know, the better. And I'm telling everyone who's listening to this, go to Danny's retreat. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity to connect with love, connect to your soul. And like you said, there was a podcast episode on your podcast where one of the retreat members shared the first question that you asked. And I was listening to that episode on the flight from Bali to North America. And I was like, oh my God, what have I done? Because the question was so vulnerable and it immediately attacked the vulnerability and asked for truth. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know if I can be this vulnerable. And then I got to the retreat and everything was fine.
Yes. And here's the thing too. It's different listening to this podcast right now versus being in the presence of somebody else who's also living in truth.
Yes.
Because you're just going to feel differently about yourself if you know the other person doesn't judge themselves and or you at all.
That's it. This is what I felt in you so much was I really felt you had no judgment towards anyone. And when you feel someone so at peace with themselves and you know you can bring up anything.
Yes.
And they have the capacity to hold it and there truly is no judgment. It allows for a level of depth and a level of vulnerability that shocked me.
That's why I do this work. That's why I meditate. That's why I read books on this. That's why I do breath work and talk deeply with friends. It's because every second of this is dedicated to someone's life. Every meditation helps somebody else grow.
Wow.
I'm not just doing this for myself. I'm not just sitting in a room or reading books for myself. I'm doing this because I love humanity and I love myself, and I want other people to experience the love that I have for myself. And so the best way that I found to do that is to increase the capacity I have so that other people can see themselves clearly.
For someone listening to this who thinks, how can I in this moment increase my capacity to love myself? What is the first thing they should start doing?
Look at the first thing you don't love about yourself. What's the first thing that comes to mind where you say, I don't love this about myself? I don't love that I look this way. I don't love that I'm this height. I don't love that I was born in this circumstance. I don't love whatever it is. That is getting in the way of truth. That is getting in the way of you loving other people. That is getting in the way of you being an embodiment of God. And I feel that so deeply, that everything we don't love about us are things that we are projecting out onto others and not being okay with them for being that way.
If it's something physical, like let's say someone's in pain or they have bad health, how can they love that part of themselves?
Well,
or let's say they have a chronic condition that has plagued them their whole life and they're living with it.
Yeah.
And no matter where they turn, they can feel it. How do you tune into, how do you love that?
Right. So there's a guy here. I have one of his books. Something to Higher Consciousness. I don't know the name of the book. I've been meaning to read it, but it's this book from 1970, and I heard about it through Wayne Dyer. And the guy has no arms and no legs, and he is the most loving guy, and he's the most connected guy to truth. And it's like, our conditions are not the thing that our condition, so often the conditions arise that take us out of love because we are not in love.
Right.
If you read Dying to Be Me by Anita Moorjani, you can see that she believes that her cancer was caused by her beliefs, by her fear of cancer, by her fears in general. And that when she was on the brink of death and she saw the other side, she realized, oh, I'm just supposed to love me. That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to love me. And she healed instantly. She heals within 4 days. Cancer, stage 4, completely gone. Goodbye, no more cancer. Because she saw the other side. And that's what the other side told her. And doctors didn't believe her. No one saw it. But she knew that her fear caused the cancer, and her love allowed it to end her cancer's life. And she's still with us to this day. And that's a beautiful thing. And so what I'm trying to say by this is that there are people in all different sorts of circumstances. I have my legs and my arms, and I am perfect health. Right? But that's not stopping somebody who doesn't have arms and legs from saying and truly believing I am perfect health. And yeah, that's what I believe on it.
It's bringing a tear to my eye thinking about this. And I'm just thinking about what you said. Choose the first thing that you don't love about yourself and start loving that.
Yeah.
Because that's the block.
Yes.
That's the most important block, perhaps, that's standing in the way of someone's connection to their heart.
Yeah.
What was the hardest truth that you had to face on your journey and love?
A really difficult one for me was coming from a wealthy family. And I had these dreams and aspirations of making money. And in my head, from my, let's call it 22 to 27-year-old self or 28-year-old self. It was, if I make a bunch of money, but then people find out that I come from a wealthy family, that will mean that me making the money is not real, is not something that is respectable, it doesn't matter, he's just a rich kid. And I really sat with that in meditations, and I started to uncover different truths with my friend Elle, and being able to say that and being able to live in that and being able to own it and be proud of it. And actually, it's a really positive thing. And actually, it's like, and it's not anything to be ashamed about. And actually, it has nothing to do with me. And actually, it wasn't my choice. And actually, so seeing that thought was pervading my being was just like it was like a virus. And once I noticed it, and once I sat with it, and once I removed it, it really allowed me to live more freely. And it allowed me to talk about it. It allowed me to be okay with the truth of that. And it sounds like, okay, so what? This kid comes from a wealthy family, like no big deal. No, like, this was something that I actively thought about all the time and was causing me a lot of fear. And when I said that on a podcast once, a friend told me, when you said that, I completely washed away my own shame about that topic. And I was like, wow.
And he had the same wow
fear
wow
or insecurity. And what I realized was, we so often, no matter what your upbringing is, you wish it was different.
Yes.
And you come from a poor family. Oh, I wish I had money. You come from a middle class family. Oh, I wish I had money, or I was poor because I'm just in the middle. Oh, you come from a wealthy family. Oh, I wish I was middle class or poor. It's like we always find a way to not like something. And that's what I've learned from working with one-on-one clients so much, is when you see so many people have different insecurities that mean absolutely nothing to you, it makes you take your own a lot less seriously.
Isn't it amazing how our own insecurities feel so big, and so important?
Yes.
And when I share them with you, it's like, it's nothing.
That's right.
But why do we get these illusions that these things are so important?
Because other people's judgments, and we take on other people's judgments as true. I mean, it is so funny because the comment about, coming from a wealthy family, like, came up in some context in the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And I was like, wow, I remember when this would have sent me spiraling. I remember but I just realized in that moment, oh, that person has a judgment, and the judgment says more about the judger than it does the person who's being judged. And often these judgments don't even appear as judgments to us. And they are below our conscious awareness of, that is a judgment against this person, that you are saying, this person can do this because of this, and you can't do this because of this. And so we take it on because we feel each other, and we feel each other's way of being, and we believe other people to be right, but we're not factoring in where they're coming from and their own insecurities. And often they're not either. And that's why everything you hear from somebody else should be taken with a huge grain of salt, because what are they projecting? They're not seeing you. They're seeing their projection, and their projection is based on how they view themselves. So it's important to keep that in mind before you're judging yourself for something that someone else is judging you for.
Tell me about the importance of truth. Why is it so important to tell the truth?
Because if you don't, then you're living two lives. And when you're living two lives, you constantly have to go in and out of personas. And you constantly have to make sure you're stepping in the right place at the right time and saying the right thing in the right way, with the right body posture, with the right way of being, and
being a chameleon in the right way.
Right. And it's so much work.
Yes.
And so it's so important to tell the truth, because you go faster when you tell the truth.
Yes.
And you're And it's so important to tell the truth because you are getting closer to love every time you do it. So, yeah, it's the most important thing. It's the basis for my work. And I'm so grateful that I've dedicated my life to it.
We were talking yesterday and considering the label Truth Magician.
Truth Magician. I would love it. It's great.
And you're so good at that, of bringing out the truth from someone or allowing them to express their truth and them feeling safe and feeling okay with it. And it's so interesting that when we talk about the things that we have shame about, the things that feel vulnerable, in the right context with the right person or people, it loses its power over us.
Yeah.
How does that happen? Why does that happen? Because I always had this thought of kind of the opposite. Oh, if I share this thing, my God, they will judge me. Or my God, this will somehow come back to bite me.
Yeah.
And the opposite is true.
Yeah. It's because we're used to sharing things with people who are judging us. And we learn not to share after we've been judged. So we assume that the next time we share, we're going to be judged.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not accounting for the level of consciousness that somebody's coming from when they receive what you are bringing to them. And that's a really important factor. And whatever the person says doesn't actually matter. But we internalize it from a young age that it does. That if I share this thing about me, if I share that I got shoved into a locker when I was a senior in high school, that's going to mean that I'm weak. I mean, that's not what it means at all. But if somebody who believes in strength being the final, physical strength being the final and complete barometer of truth, then yeah, it is a shameful thing to admit. But for somebody who believes in emotional space being the final barometer for truth, then sharing it actually leads to a higher outcome. But regardless, it doesn't actually matter what the person says. But when we internalize that, what the person believes as true from a young age, because we don't have a blocker up, a filter of, okay, this person is saying this about me. I actually don't have to accept this. This person is saying I'm short. Oh, and let's say you're 5'5" and someone calls you short. One reaction could be, yes, this is true. This is a really bad thing. Another is, yes, this is true. Another is, no, it's not true, because the comparison is to other men from the United States, whereas the comparison could be to little cats. And all of a sudden you're really tall compared to a bunch of little cats. So I guess we make ourselves feel bad for the comparison. And as my friend Joe says, comparison is the thief of joy.
Shout out to Joe.
Shout out to Joe.
What did you notice in hosting this retreat? What patterns came up across all the different members that attended? And how do you see the breakthroughs happening? What is the commonality in which the breakthrough begins to happen?
There's a few different questions there, so I hope we can get to them all. The commonality that I notice is, in this one in particular, was the earnestness for truth. Everybody there, I really felt they were serious in their desire to live with more love. It didn't feel like one person was doing it half-ass. It didn't feel like one person was just, this is interesting, but I'm kind of going to do my own thing on the side. It felt like everybody there was really on the same page.
There was no tourists.
Yes, that's well said. And I noticed that almost immediately when we did the Google Meet and the pre-call, and this is going to be great, because I could feel that from the people. And so, yeah, that was what I noticed was a commonality. Now, you also asked about breakthroughs.
Yes. When you observe us having a breakthrough and you observe it across different people and different vulnerabilities, different truths,
Yeah.
where do you see the point where, oh, they're about to have a breakthrough? What leads to that? What are the ingredients that make that possible?
Safety. Safety is the first thing that comes to mind. Someone's got to feel safe to share the thing on their mind that they only think about by themselves and or they don't allow themselves to think about. You have to feel really safe.
Is there something you do to create that safety in the retreat that allows this to be possible for people to express themselves?
I could tell you, oh, I say a bunch of ground rules. The truth is, I create the safety within myself. I know that I feel safe in my body and mind, and I know this place is safe to be all we can be. If any participant for one moment believes that I'm not safe and they're coming to my retreat, there is zero chance for them to feel safe themselves.
Wow. Your safety comes first, your sense of safety.
Yes.
And then it exudes outwards and people feel that.
Yeah. I remember during my breakup when I was like in a hotel room and feeling so unsafe and so unsure of myself and feeling like I was going to host a retreat in a month. And I was like, there's no way, because I don't have the safety within myself to make other people feel safe or to give them permission to be safe or to invite that. And so I'm not going to even go anywhere near this until I get to a place myself of feeling complete love and power and groundedness inside, because whatever I am is going to get projected out into the field.
Wow. I was wondering, because I know there was a third one planned earlier, and I was
Yes.
wondering what happened to it.
Yes.
And to hear your level of awareness, I don't feel safety in myself. Therefore, I have no business hosting this retreat at this time.
That's right.
And then a couple months later, you found your safety again.
Yes.
How did you find it again?
By doing the things that were good for me and not thinking so much. It's the truth. I was meditating every day after this breakup, every day, 45-minute sessions. And
What was coming up in those meditations?
I don't remember, but there were moments of peace and there were moments of confusion and there were moments of heartbreak, a lot of sadness, a lot of grief. It very much felt like losing a best friend, losing somebody I loved so much, and they're still alive, but it felt like I just felt the pain of what it's like to lose somebody you love. And it gave me a deeper level of softness and compassion for people because I felt it for myself and through that process. And I really, in those meditations, I would just sit and be with those emotions. And I said to myself, okay, I don't want to work out. I don't want to, because I just really want to feel my emotions. That's really what I thought. And I did that for weeks and nothing moved. And it felt like nothing moved. It felt like 6 weeks after the breakup, I was in the exact same spot as a day after. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm feeling my emotions. Why is this not working? Like,
Was there a bit of panic coming up? Like, what the hell?
Not panic, just apathy.
Yeah.
Of, okay, this doesn't work, so I guess nothing will work. I guess no one can help me. A couple of things then start to shift. One is that and it's also interesting to point out that during this time, I had an apartment that I was subleasing, and the person I was leasing it from moved back into their apartment the day that we broke up, or the week that we broke up. And so I was without an apartment and without a girlfriend, a person that I love deeply.
The ground taken away underneath your feet.
Completely. And so there goes to the point about the lack of safety.
So 6 weeks, nothing seems to be moving.
Correct.
What happens next?
A few things happen. One is that I started a daily video series. A daily video series was important for me because my mom texted me and she said during this time, and she said, you're a really creative person and you're not creating. And this is, part of your way of being. So just try to create one thing today.
Part of your dharma.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a great mom.
The best. Number one mom. She's the best. And so I started this daily video series where for every day for 100 days, I was going to record a daily video. And the daily video would just be about anything that I was going through that day. And I figured this was important because I wasn't going to an office. I wasn't seeing people. When we see people, we heal. When we see people, we heal. It's really that simple. And because I wasn't seeing people, I wasn't healing.
You were isolating.
And I was isolating. And I didn't want to see anyone.
Yeah.
And I was just upset at life and felt betrayed by life. And so the daily video series was really important. And then, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 days into the daily video series, I attended a workshop that was about somatic release. And I started to move the energy that was stuck through anger. And if you're familiar with David Hawkins' map of consciousness, anger is above apathy, and anger is above grief, and anger is above shame. And after that happened, I said to myself, oh, okay, I think I need to do 75 hard, but I don't want to do it. I'm like in a bad place right now, and I don't want to do 75 hard, but I know I need to. And within a week after the somatic release, I started doing 75 hard. Thanks to my friend Talia, who noticed my state and challenged me to it and challenged herself to it. That really helped. And that's when I started noticing actual changes. I started noticing actual changes to my state when I did 75 hard.
Can you explain it for any listeners that might not know?
Sure. It's a 75-day program where for 75 days straight, you read 10 pages of a book, you take a progress picture, you drink 1 gallon of water, you do 2 workouts, and you follow a diet with no alcohol or no cheat meals. So that's what I did for 75 days straight, starting on June 15th. And, within a month, I was a different human being. And now the emotions were now I was creating enough safety in myself to actually feel the emotions that were coming up. Whereas before, I was feeling them, but I was so confused by life, so confused by this situation, so dumbfounded that it didn't make any sense to me, and I couldn't understand it. And I wasn't in a place to actually let everything move through me and move past me.
Wow. Does it make any sense for us to go into the story of your breakup? Because it's such a fascinating story of how you met this person, how you guys broke up. Do you think that would be useful for the listener?
Sure. Yeah. I know you were such a captive audience when I told you this story.
It's a wild story.
Yeah, we can go into it. So on January 26th, I went to a plant medicine ceremony, and part of the plant medicine ceremony was like kanna and sassafras and psilocybin, and it was a group setting and group container. Pretty quickly in the night, I started to lay back in my chair. Everyone is talking to each other. Everyone's connecting with each other, and I'm just laying back. Having a vision is the best way I could describe it.
That sounds like my mushroom trips. I cannot be social in mushrooms. Yeah. I just want to be in my own space with my own mind, connecting with God, connecting with my soul.
Yeah, we're alike in that way. And so I went back and had this vision that I was going to meet my future wife the following week. Her name was going to be Jessica. She was going to be 26 years old. She was going to be a nurse. And we were going to have 2 boys and 2 girls together. And I was going to meet her this upcoming week. And I got done with that journey. And I was like, what in the fuck just happened? Like, I don't understand this. I don't understand. It was so perplexing to me. And it was so confusing. I'd never had a vision. I'd never seen a white light and could ask the white light questions. It's like, what is happening?
And the timeline was so precise.
And I call my friend Talia after this and I'm like, what just happened? Can you explain this? And she said, yeah, it sounds like you need to trust God. And I said, I think you're right. So the following night was another ceremony. And my intention for this following night was to trust God and surrender to what God wanted. And within an hour or two of the ceremony starting for the second night of completely different people, a woman comes up to me and starts talking to me. And I'm like, this is the coolest woman ever. I feel so connected to this person. And then within 5 minutes or 10 minutes of that, I start telling her about the vision. And she goes, I'm so happy for you. And then she says, oh, my name used to be Jessica. I said, what? What do you mean? I just had this vision about this woman. It's like, yeah, my name used to be Jessica. I changed it 6 years ago from Jessica to Sloan. Sloan's my mother's maiden name. And I was so in awe of this that I could just meet a Jessica or someone who is named Jessica. I was so in awe of, she has the same name as my mother's maiden name. And it just felt divine, and it didn't stop feeling divine. We had the same life purpose, to raise the consciousness of humanity, to love ourselves and to love deep. And it was, how was I meeting this person? She had a women's retreat in February. I was hosting my first men's retreat in February. It was the most magical scenario that I could never dream up. And I just assumed from the first moment, oh, this is my wife. I got the message. I can listen. I've done 450 podcast episodes. I can listen. I can understand. And we just had the most magical soulmate type connection over the following months. And then I got this every time I meditated, every single time, starting, in mid-April, it was, you have to break up with this woman. And I was like, what the fuck? I was so upset. I was so perplexed. I was so confused. I said, how could you make this so? How could this be my thought? Am I wrong? Do I not trust myself? What is going on? How could I be so sure and so knowing and so connected and so disconnected now? Is everything I believe false? Am I living a lie? What is going on? Can somebody explain this to me? And as the weeks went on, I became more and more confident that it was the right decision, but I was scared. I was scared to actually break up with her because it didn't make sense to me. I was confused. I had no idea why I was being asked to do this thing that I really didn't want to do. We would pull tarot cards every day or every other day. And the day before we ended up breaking up, I pulled the tarot card that said mental conflict. And I couldn't even think of a better tarot card to describe my perspective.
And it's like one of the only tarot cards that has that sort of negative connotation. Right?
Yes. You just saw the deck. It's like all light, love, positivity, prosperity, enjoyment. It's 62 cards in this deck. And so I pulled mental conflict on this Monday. Tuesday rolls around and I have a run club, and I come back from the run club and she's got this tarot deck out. And it was like a movie. It was like I walked in the door and she pulled a card. And the card that she pulls is conflict and defeat. And I just say to myself, give me this deck. Like, what do you mean conflict and defeat? I'm still like, this is a possibility. These thoughts have been building up in my head, but I don't want to believe them that we should break up because of how connected we are.
And the inception of the relationship.
And the inception of the relationship, of being so magical, and the fact that we have the same life purpose and life mission. And then I take the deck and I start shuffling the cards around, and one card falls out. Mental conflict.
Bro.
And in that moment, I was in awe. I was in awe of the universe. I was in awe that this actually happened. It sounds fake. If I was listening to this 3 years ago, 2 years ago, I would say, what is this guy talking about? This doesn't make any sense. But I promise you, this really happened to me. And this is a true story. And, I went to take a shower, and she came over, and she said, what's going on? And I said, I don't want to talk to you about this. And she said, well, I think we should break up. And I said, yeah, we should. And I was like, what? Like, how? I didn't understand it. I was so confused. All the emotions that I was felt before, I still was feeling in that moment as well. And as the layers peeled back, as I got to know myself even deeper in the next few months, I really helped understand and understood what was happening, why it was happening, the lessons in it. But yeah, that's the story of my first 5 months of 2024. And it was a whirlwind.
Can you explain some of the lessons that you learned from this and what arose for you over the next couple of months that helped you clarify what actually happened there?
Yeah. So one thing is, in the first moments we met, I asked her, I said, she's 44 years old. I'm 29 or 28 at the time we met. And I asked her, where's the 24-year-old version of you? And she said, oh, they're out there. She wasn't offended in the slightest. And she told me they're out there. And I didn't believe her. And I didn't believe myself that what I wanted was actually out there. And so I compromised on my vision for what I wanted, because it seemed good enough. It seemed almost there. So because I compromised on what I wanted, in even the smallest way, that small kernel came up. And we had each written letters to the person that we wanted to be with. And when she read her letter to the person that she wanted to be with to me the first week that we met, it was 100% me. She had manifested me like that. And when I read her my letter that I had wrote 2 weeks before meeting her, it was 95% her. And that 5% is the reason why it didn't work out. Because that 5% magnified. And so for somebody living in truth, now this is not everyone, but if you're listening to this podcast and you're trying to live in truth, compromising on 5% of your vision is going to make you 100% upset.
Oof. Bro. I feel that.
Yeah. And so the thing is, not everyone is trying to live in truth. And so that statement doesn't apply to everyone. That statement applies to somebody who's dedicating their life to truth and dedicating their life to what they really want.
And for that, you need uncompromising vision.
That's right.
Because the 5% matters.
That's right.
And I also see it as I learned this concept from my friend Steve, the concept of a partial match, that when you're trying to manifest something, the universe will present you a partial match almost like a test to see if you're going to bite.
Yes.
And you must hold out for the full match.
Yes.
Because if you say, yeah, it's like you're moving between dimensions. Danny at point A, Danny with 100% of what he wants. And along the way, you're going to encounter partial matches. Now, if you say yes to it, you're basically telling the universe, stop the order here. Yes. I choose this. And if you hold out for it, you get to go all the way to the full match.
I felt that so strongly. And I wish I listened to this in January, and I wouldn't have heard it. I didn't have the ears to hear it. And that's okay. That was part of my journey. But I'm so grateful that we're recording this podcast right now, because I know some person is living right now in their partial match.
Yes.
And
what would you say to that person? They're in the partial match. They know it's not exactly what they want.
Yeah.
But they don't have the courage to exit the partial match. What do you say to them?
I would say, how deeply do you want to devote your life to truth? It's your choice. And 95% for many people is good enough. And for me, with my soul on fire, with passion ignited, I wasn't going to be able to do that. I've never been able to do that. I've never been able to do 95%. It's always been all in. And I can't be all in if my heart's not all in. And so I would say that it's okay, because the truth will come out in the appropriate time. I also really had a lot of compassion for people who knew they needed to make a change, but couldn't for some reason or another. That's how I felt. And I've never really felt that all my life, but I felt that in this 2 or 3 week period. If it's not the time, it's not the time. But I know I need to make a change, but it's not the time. And if I had done it as soon as I felt it, I wouldn't have got the tarot card story at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, I wouldn't have been able to see the magic of the ending.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful for the magic of the ending.
Well, and the lesson I see in that is that if you don't make the decision will be made for you. If you're in a relationship that you're in partial match, the other person will feel the energy and they'll make the decision. If you're in a job that you're not satisfied in, you will get fired. Something will happen to nudge you out of that scenario, because the universe is nudging us closer to truth.
Yeah, that's right. And what I find so fascinating is, I knew this for 2 or 3 weeks, that I wanted to break up with her, had this inkling, and I didn't. And what I find so fascinating is that I went on my first date in the last week. Yeah, it was literally less than a week ago.
First date since the breakup.
First date since the breakup.
5 months later.
5 months later. And I get on the date. I love this woman's company. I enjoy her presence. I'm so excited about her, and we connect so deeply. And as soon as we say goodbye, I have this sinking feeling of, oh, that wasn't it. And oh my God, that wasn't it. Oh my God. Wait, that's not it. What does that mean? What do I have to tell her? Wait, I really enjoyed her company. I enjoyed her presence. Why isn't this it? And I realized I was transported back to April, mid-April, where I didn't say the truth to my partner. And I said to myself, wow. Within a day, I told her that this wasn't right. And it was uncomfortable for me to say, but I told her it wasn't right. And I really enjoyed our time together, but also I know this isn't the right partnership for me. And I just, in that moment, after I told her, I got clarity that I was presented the exact same situation 5 months later as the one that I left off on.
Mm. The universe brings the test back again.
That's right.
To see how committed you are to truth this time around. And you passed the test with flying colors.
I did, but it was painful. And I felt why I didn't tell my initial partner, because I said, oh my God,
It's hard work.
This is hard.
This is really hard.
This is uncomfortable. I don't want to tell this person this. And it was the day before the retreat. And it was the day of the retreat that I said the truth. And I realized in that moment how much space I gained by virtue of not putting this off to some unknown future date and just saying it when I knew it.
Well, the timing is so divine.
Yes.
Of course, it happens right before the retreat. You as the host of this retreat, which is all about truth, get a test about truth the day of the retreat.
From the hardest situation that had previously been an untruth that I didn't own fully, that I felt shame around.
Talk about getting the gift of embodying your truth right before the retreat.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. God is great.
God really is great. When you start to see this,
The dots connecting.
it's undeniable that we are being guided. And that's why I devote my life to this, because I see it so clearly.
And do you believe also that nothing is off track? Whenever we think we've made a mistake or the wrong turn, if it happened, it was what was meant to happen.
100%. I said that to someone on the run today. Those exact words. I said, when we think we're going off the path, that's actually part of the path.
Enjoy the journey.
That's right. It's going in crazy directions, and that's okay. So just enjoy it. Watch the movie.
Watch the movie.
That's what I say often. Watch the movie.
Love that. Love that. Oh man, this is so juicy. I'm loving this.
Yeah, this was what the conversations were like at the retreat,
Yes.
right? So people can get a real sense for, I'm going there. I'm telling people, we're going to these places. And how can I expect other people to tell the truth of the things that they could, that they'd be scared to tell or nervous if I'm not willing to do that myself?
Yes.
Right?
You always started every prompt you would give us, you would share as well.
Yeah, not everyone, but most. Yeah.
And it made a huge, huge difference.
Yeah. Because I was like, I'm part of this as well.
Yeah.
And one thing I didn't say in this one, but I meant to say, was that I'm a student. I'm learning just like you guys. I'm guiding us and I'm the one who brought us together. But the thing that you learn is the thing that's most important that you take away may or may not be from me. And I fully expect that someone else is going to have some wise thing that you take away based on a one-on-one conversation that is just going to happen because it was supposed to happen. There's no sense that I need to teach you everything and you are the student. It's like we're all co-creating this experience together. And it's so beautiful. And I fully trust that whatever somebody learns is what they're supposed to learn. And I am a student and I'm learning from everybody. And I was in awe of everyone. I'm in awe of anyone who attends one of my retreats. You're saying to yourself, I want to go into the deep fire of the things that I've been pushing down and making that the unconscious that has been running my life. It's a lot easier to just go throughout life completely unaware. But what the priceless riches you get from actually diving into this stuff, it's painful sometimes at first, but it's always long-term beautiful.
100%. I was terrified. I was terrified to go because I knew from watching your work online and from knowing you beforehand, man, we're going to go deep. Am I prepared to go this deep? I was like, I'm going to book the December one. I'm going to go to the next one. Let me stay in Bali for a few months. I'm on a good momentum here. And God was like, nope, you're going in October.
Yeah.
You're going to this one and you're going to face whatever you need to face.
What was your biggest takeaway, learning, story from the last 5 days or lesson?
It was sharing my truth. And you've seen me do it a couple times. And even after the retreat, we met up for a post-retreat dinner. And maybe the biggest truth came out that I needed to share,
Yep.
which I'll dive into in another episode. But it was essential for me. And this, my intention when I went to the retreat was, I just want to be free.
Yeah.
I just want to be free to be myself. And I know there are multiple areas where I'm not free. And maybe if I go to this retreat, which I know is all about stepping into your truth, I'm going to learn how to be free. And I did.
Wow. It's quite the testimonial.
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that. And it's so simple, right? But there's so many blockers that get in the way.
What do you notice as the most common blockers that get in the way?
Other people's perspectives is the biggest one. And owning other people's perspectives and taking them on as your own.
Such a trap.
Yeah. The shame, the guilt, those are big blockers. The fear. I mean,
why are we so afraid to be
ourselves? Yeah. Because we've been taught our whole lives not to be. We've been taught. I mean, I was watching Seinfeld with my cousin Ben after this retreat. And within the first 10 minutes, we probably could have counted 10 times that the characters had lied to each other or themselves, and everyone was laughing about it. And I stopped and said to him, this is like slavery. Us lying to each other, and it's so entrenched in the culture that no one is noticing it. And people think it's just not a big deal.
A little white lie here and there.
Yeah, for a laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And it builds up, and it makes you completely forget that the truth sets you free. And so I genuinely think we've been programmed, and I don't mean it from a top-down perspective. I think people just think about what makes kids laugh in a playground is like bullying somebody or laughing at themselves or lying to get someone's attention. And I think that it's just so deeply entrenched that it's okay to not tell the truth.
And to not be fully yourself.
It's entrenched. And even in the show Seinfeld, there's a character called Kramer. And Kramer is the weird guy. And the weird guy always tells the truth. And Ben had this moment of, oh my God, this is my favorite show. And I've always resonated the most with Kramer. I never understood why. And just the fact that the weird person is the person who tells the truth just tells you all you need to know about where we're currently at in 2024.
You remind me of an interview with Jordan Peterson, where the interviewer said, "Why are you doing what you're doing?" And he said, "I just want to tell the truth and see what happens."
Yeah. I resonate.
In 2024, that's a big deal for some people. I just want to say the truth that I see with my own two eyes and see what happens.
Yeah. And this is where it goes to trusting yourself.
Yes.
And telling the truth and trusting yourself are so related. You need to fully believe that what you are seeing with your own eyes is your truth, and you have the power to own that.
And trusting that when you say the truth, the universe will back you up.
That's right.
You will not fall into the abyss.
That's right.
Although it may seem that way in the initial turbulence that is created from telling the truth after so many years of hiding.
That's right. It will create turbulence in your life. It better.
Otherwise, it's not the truth.
Right. Right. And it's also related to following your heart. There was a sense in May of 2022 for me where I visited Austin for the first time, and my heart was, this is for me. This place, I don't know why, I don't know what's going on, but this place is for me.
You felt the truth of it.
I felt the truth of it. It was what my heart was calling. But then I had I don't want to move. I'm just going to push this back, and maybe this was just a fluke. So I visited again And I felt it again. And I visited a third time. And I felt it a third time. And the third time somebody asked me, hey, I listened to your podcast. This is in a sauna. Hey, I listened to your podcast and do you want to rent out my apartment while I go to Bali? It's like,
Yo.
yeah. I was like, yes, I would love that. And so it turned out to be an amazing opportunity and an amazing way to really not have to buy anything and sign a lease, and just an amazing blessing, an amazing friend who gave me that opportunity. And it came because it happened at the perfect time, surrendering to the flow of life. And it was what my heart actually wanted, to be in a different place than I was. And so this is one thing I mentioned to you at the retreat, is just take the next obvious step, right? The next obvious step for me in May of 2022 was move to Austin, Texas. And my life wasn't going to progress in the direction that I really wanted until I took that next obvious step. I couldn't have known what was going to happen when October 2022, I moved to Austin, or get the feeling that I'm going to. October 2023, I'm loving the podcast, but I'm just, there's this new sense, there's this new passion, there's a new thing that gets ignited with all of this work on consciousness and love and connection and truth. And I wasn't even planning on going in this direction. I wanted to sell out Madison Square Garden for a live podcast filled with 19,763 people in Madison Square Garden. That's not my intention, to start talking about truth and connection and love. Fuck out of here. I was trying to build the biggest podcast in the world. And this other thing just really got me. It really connected with my soul. And then October 2024 we're here in a different apartment, but I'm talking about the things that I was learning a year ago and then I started living a year ago. I didn't know. I couldn't have predicted that when I moved to Austin. It just felt right 2 years ago. And so you don't know. If you're actually trying to live in truth, you're not going to know. You're not going to be able to plan out the path. It's impossible, because one thing's going to lead to another, and one person is going to connect with this person, and this person is going to say, you got to talk to that person, and the guides are going to flow, and the people are going to go, and you are going to be in a different reality. And that's okay. And can you accept that? Can you embrace that? Can you, if you've published 450 podcast episodes, can you say, I'm good for now with this podcast? Can you let go of being known as this person? Can you let go of being in this relationship? Can you let go of, that's like over and over and over. Life's testing you. Are you sure? Because life's going to get better and better, but you got to keep unfolding into the truth. So
Yes, 100% yes. And if life is a training ground for the soul, of course, as you get stronger, the challenges test you more.
I felt that so strongly. And as your capacity to hold more space expands, the contractions are going to be deeper and harder and more painful.
Can you talk about expansion and contraction? Because I love your view on this.
Yeah. You know, David Hawkins has the map of consciousness. And the map of consciousness, if you look this up, it's going from low to high. Low energy frequencies to high energy frequencies. So the idea could be, let me just get to the highest energy frequency I can hold and just be there and just chill there, and life will be good there. And what I've experienced is that once you reach this energetic frequency, life is going to contract you. Once you expand to a new height, life is going to contract you to say, what's the lowest you're going to go and what can you hold? And similar to the breath of, when you take the breath,
expansion,
the expansion, and then it is equivalent to the amount that you can contract. And so our friend Nick Sweeney is doing breath work, saying that he's doing inhales of 55 seconds. I don't know in what world I'm doing an inhale of 55 seconds. Only if I hire him as a coach, which everybody listening to this should do, since he's a phenomenally talented human being. But 55 seconds seems to me to be the biggest inhale of my life. But he's talking about how he does 55-second inhales. and 55-second exhales. So similarly, emotionally, if you can hold a 55-second inhale, think of it as 55 seconds of joy and peace and love. You have to exhale that out as well. And that exhale can lead you to understanding the feelings of shame or guilt or loss or fear or heartbreak. And then you get to inhale again. And life is just one big inhale, exhale. And life is one big expansion, contraction.
So for those that have this view that reality can just constantly be an inhale or constantly be an expansion,
Right.
what would you say?
I would say that you're missing half of life.
Wow.
And the half that you're missing is beautiful and painful at the same time. But we were talking about this. There's a nostalgia that happens after you experience one of these exhales that's really painful. When you're out of that nostalgia, you go back and you say, wow, I remember the good old days of when I was really feeling this pain.
Yeah.
And it's suffering. Absolutely. It is suffering. It's deep, deep suffering. And also it's beautiful. And also it doesn't have to be beautiful for it to be worthwhile and for it to be what you're here to live and what you're here to witness in your movie.
Robert Scheinfeld in one of his books talks about how there is no such thing as negative or positive emotion. It's just energy with a certain speed, certain
Yes.
velocity,
Yes.
certain direction,
Yes.
and you're there for the ride.
That's right.
But it's us choosing to label this is negative, this is positive. And I think he talked about when you go on a roller coaster, you could view that as terrifying, fearful, or you could view that as exhilarating, exciting. Both are true. Both are energy vortexes swirling around in your inner landscape.
Yeah, and similar to a roller coaster too. Sometimes you go up a little bit and go down a little bit. Other times you go all the way up and sometimes you go all the way down. And so life is like that from my experience. And the more that you live in truth, the more that gets magnified.
What role does vulnerability play in this whole process?
Vulnerability is, I think, how it gets transmuted. How some of the lower energy, the slower energies become faster. When you are vulnerable, you are being witnessed in the thing that you feel shameful about or you feel grief about. And by virtue of being witnessed by other people who, if they are coming from a higher energy, it's going to help you grow.
Yes.
It's going to help you have a higher energy because you're going to look at it more from that perspective. And so if you're vulnerable to somebody who is also in a slower energetic place, they're going to say, what's wrong with you? Why are you sharing this with me?
Ooh. And that's where
you feel it. You contract even more and you feel it even more.
Yeah.
Of, oh, I'm right to be feeling this way.
I'm right to be ashamed.
I'm right to be ashamed.
I'm right to be guilty.
I'm right to be.
I'm not a good person.
That's right. And when you tell it to somebody who has a higher energetic frequency or somebody who's operating more from love or peace or joy, they're gonna think about how they would view that situation happening to themselves and run it through their own filter. And they're gonna meet you with a higher energetic frequency, which is gonna make you realize that it's not so bad after all. And vulnerability, when used in the right place to the right person, shared in the right place to the right person, is extremely powerful way to increase your own level of love for yourself.
Why do we feel sometimes if we're vulnerable, we're going to be seen as weak?
Because so many people feel themselves to be weak and project that weakness to the other person. Right? It's as simple as that. And And because people have learned time and time again, when I share the truth, I'm met with someone who doesn't accept me for who I am. And so I'm not going to share the truth. I'm not going to be vulnerable again because look what happened. I have proof that my opinion, what I see, is not valuable, is not something to be loved. It's not a perspective that is esteemed in any way. And that's why.
If someone feels like they don't have anyone in their life to share their truth with, where can they start?
Send me a DM. That's a good place to start. I think, even sending me a DM is not actually the response that's appropriate, because it really is an internal game. And it really is, you have to ask yourself the difficult questions of, what am I not seeing here? What's the lesson to learn from this situation?
What's the gift?
What's the gift in this? And you have to sit with yourself and answer these questions. And I mean, I remember I really started to make progress with the breakup when I kept a note in my phone that was lessons learned from breakup.
Oh, I feel that.
And it turned out to be 15 or 20 bullet points that I could feel. And I see, okay, I see the point. I see the point. And so, to somebody in that place, I would say, start doing the things that are good for you. Are you meditating every day? Are you moving your body every day? Are you in a place to really feel this pain? Right? Do you need to create some additional safety in yourself before you really start the work of looking at it? Do you need to start running? Do you need to start moving your body or going on walks? Right? Somebody in that place, I would say that you are loved and you are enough exactly as you are, and the situation is perfect. And I know it. For somebody in deep suffering, I tell that to myself in May, and I say to myself, I know this is true intellectually, but I don't feel this is true emotionally right now. And for me, it was, okay, time and new perspectives are going to heal me. Time and new perspectives are going to heal me. So figure out a way to get some time and get some new perspectives. Because you change your perspectives, you change your life.
You mentioned to me before that in that moment, that period of the heartbreak, you felt betrayed by God.
Yeah.
You felt betrayed by life.
Yeah.
And I've had a moment like that in my life. I think everyone listening to this might have had a moment like that in their life. How did you come back to trusting life, trusting God? From feeling the uttermost betrayal to, I love God. I love life.
Yeah.
I understand now why this happened.
Yeah. There were a few weeks in August. When did we record our...
August,
yeah. So in August, I started to turn a corner. And I started to repeat, I love you, God. I love you, God. I love you, God. I love myself. I love myself. I love myself. The practices from Kamal Ravikant's book, Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It, were incredibly useful. I reread that book in August when I was ready for it. And on September 12th, I was walking on the trail, and I bump into my friend Tim Pereira. And I see him, and I was like, wow, Tim, so great to see you. Like, it was just a chance run in. I'm start telling him about Wayne Dyer, and I'm starting to read Wayne Dyer. And he's obsessed with Ram Dass in this moment on September 12th, and probably is right now as well. And he was telling me how Wayne Dyer was actually funding Ram Dass's lifestyle towards the end of his life. And and as we're talking about this, a woman with a shirt that says "Be Here Now" runs by. "Be Here Now" is Ram Dass's book, one of his most popular books, might be his first book. And in that moment, I said, "Oh, we're back.
We're back.
We're back. We're back in the flow of life, and we're back with the connection to the divine." And it had been months of work. There was no synchronicity in May, June, or July. I did not experience the divine in those months.
The magic
of life. I mean, and then in July, Andy Frisella invited me onto his podcast for a full circle moment, the creator of 75 Hard, who's got this massive podcast called Real AF. I was a guest on this podcast. What is going on? Like on August 8th, 2024, so 888, I was like, okay, there's something to that. But it was really in mid-September where I realized that I was in the flow and it wasn't stopping. The synchronicities were every day. They were potent, they were strong, they were connected. And it was months of work to get to that point. And everything we talked about, it was meditating every day. I've meditated for the past 160 days. I've, did 75 Hard. I was reading Wayne Dyer every day. I'm reading Kamal Ravikant's book. I live this, right? And you've lived with me for the past 3 days, 4 days. You could feel that I live this. And so living it creates your reality. I lived it, and so I got to experience real magic. There's a spiritual solution to every problem by Wayne Dyer. Real Magic by Wayne Dyer. These books I'm reading, right? So it becomes your reality the more you infuse it into your consciousness. That's thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I love this, brother. I love this. What is next for Danny Miranda? What is lighting you up? What is igniting your passion?
Writing these synchronicities down is so special. And writing this book that may turn out to be just a bunch of synchronicities from my life I wouldn't doubt that the book becomes that. But I'm loving writing and loving writing the stories that happen. It feels like my life is infused with so much magic, and I just want to share that. I want to share the remarkable things that happen to me on a day-to-day basis that are so potent that it brought my cousin who had never experienced this to awe, just real awe and appreciation. And I just want others to know this is possible. It's possible to live a life of love. It's possible to live a life in truth. I don't care what you did in your life that made you guilty or shameful or upset. I know it is possible for you to touch the divine. I know it's possible for every human being because they are a spirit in a body. We are all just spirits in bodies. And when we are inspired in spirit, we connect with the divine. And so I want everybody to be inspired. I want everybody to be in spirit. I want everyone to really feel the presence of God within themselves. So yeah, that's what I'm inspired by in this moment. Writing, sharing, connecting, men's retreats, coaching, living truth, being one with all that is, and witnessing synchronicities. I think I told you yesterday that synchronicities and being able to experience God through synchronicities is my favorite thing about life. And I really feel that so deeply that I have a note in my phone, Divine Moments Log, which I recommend everyone start, where you just track the synchronicities. You track the moments that happen that make you go, oh my God. And if you're not feeling that right now, it's because you are not fully living in love. And if you did fully live in love, there is no choice but the synchronicities to flow into your life. So, yeah, that's what's exciting me.
Brother, amazing. Such a pleasure to sit with you, to be in your presence, to learn from you. Can you share, for the listeners who are not meditating currently, what is the simplest way they can start, and what is the power of unguided meditation?
Yes, I realized that I needed to clarify this. Thank you to cousin Ben, who is on a 14-day unguided meditation streak. I never even considered that when I said meditate for the past 5 years, people might have been thinking about guided meditations being the way that they did it. And so I got to see my cousin's perspective as he's lived with me for the past 14 days. And I saw how this was his first time doing unguided meditations, and how much it impacted him, how much his life was changing by virtue of listening to himself. Would you look at that? Your life changes when you listen to yourself. Your life changes when you listen to yourself. I would tell people all the time on the podcast, turn the podcast off and listen to yourself. And that's what I recommend for everyone. It's like, use the podcast as learning, as inspiration. And I love inspiration. I love listening to music. Light Place playlist is a great place as well to feel inspired. And
we'll link it in the show notes.
Yes, we'll link it in the show notes. It's my favorite place to just be one with the divine and really feel joy and presence. But unguided meditation for me is the opportunities that I get to really hear what I'm trying to do with my life. It is the moments where I feel life guiding me to a solution. And I don't like sometimes what it's guiding me to do in the case of this breakup. And at the heart of it, I know it's when I'm doing unguided meditations, it's leading me to my highest outcome. The best way to get started with it is to download Insight Timer and start tracking your streak. Put your Ombu bell on and start tracking your streak. And it shows you day 1, day 5, day 10. It shows you how many hours you've meditated. For me, it's so exciting to see the stats. But what's really exciting is that I'm living a life of truth because of this. And you don't need the app. You can get a kitchen timer. I used a kitchen timer for the first 4 years of meditating, and it was the most important investment I ever made. It was this $15 kitchen timer that I got on Amazon. And so I've since graduated to the Ombu Bell from Insight Timer, and I highly recommend it. I mean, anything that will get you meditating every day, anything that will get you listening to the truth of what you actually believe, it is the most important thing any of us can do, is to just sit in silence and listen to what comes up. And
that's the simplest instruction. Set a timer for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Sit in silence and listen to the inner voice.
Yes. Thank you for really clarifying that. That is the simplest instruction. That's what I did.
There's nothing else you need to be doing in that meditation, just listening.
That's right. And one thing from my friend Tej Dosa that he always says to mention is keeping your back straight up. So not to do it in bed, laying down when you're just getting started. And I noticed a difference between laying down and sitting up.
What did you notice?
Just more likely to go to sleep and not as tuned into what is actually being said or what I'm directed to do.
The transmission of the downloads is being affected.
Yeah.
You need to sit up for the antenna to reach God.
And Ben was saying before, it's not something I want to make a habit of. And I like that, where it's, do it. Like, lay down and meditate, but just don't make a habit out of it by virtue, because I believe it more likely just makes you want to go to sleep. So whatever. Sit up and meditate 20 minutes, set a kitchen timer or set an Ombu bell from Insight Timer, and just witness what comes up. And also the other thing is, it's okay if you think thoughts. That's the point of meditation, to think thoughts. There's no sense of you need to be perfect, still, tranquility, and your mind has to be a blank slate of peaceful nothingness. That's beautiful if you just close your eyes and that's what you experience. But it's also okay if you're like, wait, I have this appointment at 3:00 the next day, and what am I going to do this moment? And what about lunch tomorrow? That's fine. That's part of meditation. And don't get mad at yourself for those thoughts, because those thoughts are similar to you sweating at the gym. So think whatever you want. Just witness your mind. You might think it does nothing, similar to, you might think that Like lifting weights does nothing because you can't see any difference after one day to the next. But you do it consistently for 90 days, your life fundamentally will be different. And that's a scary proposition for some people. But from my perspective, after meditating for 4 of the last 5 years, it has been the most important investment of my life, most important decision of my life. And I hope that you enjoy it if that's what you choose to do.
90-day challenge. I feel like it's an invitation for anyone listening.
Yeah, let's make it 100 while we're at it.
100 days.
100-day challenge.
20 minutes meditation.
20 minutes meditation.
Every day. Listen to your mind. See what happens.
That's it.
Danny, it's been such a pleasure. I have so enjoyed learning from you. It's been such a pleasure to be in your presence, to learn from your energy, learn from your hard-won wisdom and your standard of love. That is the biggest thing I got out of the retreat. I put it in my notes. Forget the insights, forget the downloads. Just being in the beam of light that Danny Miranda is and witnessing your standard for how to be fully in your love, in your truth, makes my standard go up. Is there anything we haven't mentioned, anything we haven't dove into that you think the listener needs to hear as a final reminder for how to best live their life, connect with their truth, connect with their heart, and trust?
It's a classic Tim Ferriss. Is there anything else? I love that. Anything else? There is a sense, and you touched on it a little bit, that the wisdom has been hard won, right? And there's a tendency that I've seen in people over and over again that this has to be difficult. It has to be difficult to face your insecurities. It has to be difficult to tell the truth. I'm going to have a hard conversation later. We're going to do this difficult thing. I'm going to do the hard inner work. And I always see this in people. And for me, it's been the easiest thing in the world. It's the easiest thing to tell the truth. We make it difficult. We make it difficult to cover up our stuff. We make it a difficult conversation because we're going to let someone down. It doesn't have to be a difficult conversation to let someone down. You can let someone down. It can be an easy conversation. And so on this path of telling the truth, of living in love, I would encourage everybody to ask themselves, how can I make this 10% easier? That's what I got.
Love this. Love this. One of my lessons in my course is, how could this be easy?
Yes.
How can I look at this thing that I've been looking at as difficult and see it as easy?
Yeah. It wasn't like I said to myself before the retreat, we're going to go and we're going to do some hard work here and really dive deep into the inner work to really
pull it out of you.
Pull it out of people. It's going to be so difficult. No, it's like, how can I live most in love? How can I live most in the truth? This is the easiest thing in the world.
You made it so easy to be in truth.
Yeah, because that's what I aim to aspire and live in all the time. And so the truth is easier. We just are led to believe that it's more difficult because we've covered it up. And it feels really easy to live in truth for me at this point. And even when I'm uncomfortable with telling that woman, it's like, this is the easiest thing. It's much harder to lie to her or to push it back or to live in a lie or a half-truth. It's much harder to do that.
It's the most obvious next step.
Yes. Well said. Well said.
Brother, so much love for you. So much respect. So much gratitude. Thank you.
You're welcome. And before we go, I also have to say, I am inspired so much by your vulnerability, your truthfulness, your intention, and your ability to go into it. It really stood out to me because I know you flew from Bali here and just the fact that you went so deep on yourself and lived up to your intention, and there were moments for you not to go deep into it, and it seemed like from every time I experienced it, stepped into the fire and went one layer deeper and one layer deeper and one layer deeper. To me, that is inspirational, exciting, and so much love to you for doing that, because it just shows how committed you are to this path. And I really love that, and I'm inspired by that. So thank you.
Thank you, brother. I would not have been able to look myself in the mirror if I did not put my all into the retreat, into facing my truth. And it was difficult at times. And there was a moment, you remember, where I was facing a particular fear, and you just gave me this look, and I looked back. Oh, fuck, I have to do this, don't I?
And I'm excited for you as you get even deeper and deeper into this, to share these moments and share, your own truth in your own life with people, because I know that what you're scared to share, people will really resonate with, and people will love you for as soon as you love yourself for.
That may be the one fear I have, is the integration. Can I take everything I've learned here, where it's so easy to be in truth with you, and live that when I go back to Bali?
Yeah. And my response to that is just put me on your council of angels, right? The topic we've talked about that you've highlighted for me of being like, you have to make a video about this, which is just this idea that when I go places, I go with all of my favorite people who hold me with love in every moment, who don't judge me in the slightest, who bring me the most compassion, the most new perspectives, the most wisdom. And wherever I go, there they are in my mind. And so when I'm talking to some new stranger who I'm scared is going to judge me, I'm saying to myself, it's okay. I've got Talia. I've got Elle. I've got Nebras. And they're going to work itself out. I've got my mom, right? Like, I've got people who will love me unconditionally. And
you hold them in your mind.
And I hold them in my mind as I'm talking to people, because it's a wild world out there. And there's a lot of triggers that you have from childhood that come up and can come up in any given moment. And if you hold people who love you with unconditional love, if you hold them in your mind, you are there with them. And no matter what happens, you're loved. And so I recommend it. I do it. And it might be a useful way for you to integrate this weekend, because you got a lot of people from the retreat who love you unconditionally and who see the best and the brightest in James Ander.
A lot of new angels just joined the council.
Yes, that's right.
And you brought them together. And for that, I'm immensely grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother. You've been listening to the James Ander Trip with special guest Danny Miranda. All the links will be in the show notes. Check his podcast out. We'll have a link to his playlist. And if you enjoyed this conversation, send Danny a DM of appreciation, because I'm sure he'd like to know. Thank you so much for being a listener of the podcast. Follow us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Peace.